Welcome to another deep dive, you guys. This time, we're going to explore the emotional landscape of Iris Haim. Her son Yotam was tragically kidnapped and killed by Hamas on October 7th.
During the war.
During the war, yeah. And we're really diving into a collection of these incredibly raw and unfiltered interviews that Iris gave to various Israeli news channels. I mean, she really opened up.
She did. I mean, each interview offers a unique window into how she processed the event and how she experienced it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you highlighted her remarkable composure and this message of unity that you don't really expect. And it's hard to know where to even begin unpacking something this profound.
Right. So, let's imagine ourselves back on October 7th, and, we are Iris living on Kibbutz Be'eri.
Yeah.
And Hamas invades, and your son is taken captive. Your life is instantly and irrevocably changed.
I mean, the agony of not knowing and the desperate hope for his return must have been just unbearable. So how did she cope in those early days? How did she even function?
Yeah. She talks a lot about clinging to hope, relying heavily on the IDF for any information about Yotam. But she also sought solace in music.
Oh, yeah. She talked about the frequencies of music.
Yes.
Being a form of prayer.
Yeah, it was like a way to connect to something larger than herself.
There was that one very specific detail that really struck me, and I think it struck a lot of listeners when they heard her say this. She requested that the IDF give her good news anytime, but bad news only during the day.
Yeah, so that she could have some peace at night.
Yeah, I mean, just that request alone underscores the immense pressure and emotional toll that she was under. I mean, talk about strength.
Right. Trying to maintain some type of normalcy or semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and speaking of strength, her composure throughout these interviews is just astonishing. Even knowing the outcome, she doesn't erupt in anger. There's this incredible sense of peace that just radiates from her. Where does that come from?
That's one of the things that I find most fascinating about her. It's like a combination of factors that leads to this strength.
Yeah.
But first, she was already a seasoned veteran of supporting her son through hardship.
Because of his...
Yotam had a chronic illness. It affected his spine and required years of treatments and different challenges.
So she had already built this incredible resilience just dealing with his health issues.
Totally. I think she had become accustomed to facing adversity head on, just focused on solutions rather than succumbing to despair.
But there's more to it than just that.
You're right.
You.
Her profession played a significant role in all of this.
Okay.
Iris worked as a palliative care nurse.
Oh, wow.
Helping people navigate the end of their lives. This experience profoundly shaped her understanding of death and the human spirit.
Oh, wow. I can't imagine a more intense training ground for dealing with loss. So what did she take away from that work?
She talks a lot about learning the importance of acceptance, finding peace in the face of the inevitable, and her work taught her about the fragility of life, but also about the enduring power of the human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if she had been unknowingly preparing for this moment, even though she couldn't have known what was coming.
It's wild. And then, there's the element of faith, which seems to evolve throughout the interviews.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting because she describes herself as secular. But as she processes this grief, she speaks more and more about a broader sense of belief, not necessarily in religious dogma, but in a higher purpose, in the power of prayer and collective positive energy.
Yeah, it's not like she found God, but she found something.
Right.
I think it was interesting when she said the frequency of music is a form of prayer.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful way to articulate it. She's tapping into that spiritual dimension of life without being tied to a specific religion.
Right. There's just this deep human need to connect to something larger than ourselves, especially when we were facing death and loss like this.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this foundation of resilience from her life experiences, but then comes this act of forgiveness that's almost beyond comprehension. Iris forgives the soldiers who accidentally killed her son during the rescue attempt. I mean, how is that even possible?
That's really the remarkable turn in her story.
It is.
But she's very clear. This is not about condoning what happened or minimizing the tragedy. She explicitly states that she would give anything to turn back time. But her forgiveness stems from a place of profound empathy.
Empathy for the soldiers who were in an impossible situation trying to save her son.
Exactly. She talks about understanding the burden that they would carry, the guilt and the trauma of their actions.
And it's not about absolving them of what happened, but acknowledging their humanity.
Yes, and the impossible choices that they were forced to make.
There's that anecdote that she shares about the soldier who had been completely withdrawn. He was unable to leave his house for 15 years after a traumatic event.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing Iris's message of forgiveness gave him the strength to finally step outside again. That's pretty powerful.
It is. It's a powerful example of how her act of forgiveness transcended her own personal healing and affected others who were struggling with guilt and trauma. It speaks to the power of her message to reach beyond individual pain and to offer solace to others.
It's a real ripple effect.
Yeah.
And it's important to acknowledge that her husband, Raviv, really struggled with this.
Yeah.
He carried a heavy weight of guilt, feeling responsible for not being able to save Yotam.
And you see this in the sources, a difference in their grieving processes. Raviv's pain is intertwined with guilt and feeling like he failed his son. Whereas Iris's forgiveness, while extraordinary, also created a complex dynamic within their relationship because they were both navigating their grief in their own way.
And it's really from this act of forgiveness that we see her message of unity for Israeli society begin to emerge.
Yeah.
What prompted this shift in her perspective?
The outpouring of support that she received after Yotam's death was overwhelming, and it came from incredibly diverse communities. And this opened her eyes to the common threads that bind Israelis together despite all of their differences.
And then there's that pivotal moment she describes, meeting the mother of a religious soldier who was killed in the same attack. I mean, talk about perspective.
It was a turning point for her.
Yeah.
It shattered any pre-existing fears she had about religious and right-wing groups, especially as the mother of a gay son. She had been conditioned to see them as the other, but this shared experience revealed their shared humanity.
Like she stepped outside of her bubble.
Totally, and it fueled this message of unity that she has. She urges Israelis to focus on shared values, to recognize the common enemy, and to stand together against hate and division.
So it's not about ignoring differences, but about choosing to prioritize what unites us. And that's a powerful message, especially coming from someone who has every right to be consumed by anger and grief.
It really challenges us to question our own preconceptions and to seek common ground, even in the face of profound disagreement.
And this brings her into conflict with some within the captive families movement, right?
Yeah, she expresses unease with the politicization of their movement, preferring to trust the government and the IDF to handle the situation.
Because she feels discomfort with the anger and blame directed at the government.
Yes, feeling that it weakens the country during a time when we need to be strong.
She even talks about Hamas leader Sinwar, saying that he thrives on division within Israel. It's almost as if she's saying that by uniting, we're actually undermining our enemies.
Yeah, it's a fascinating connection that she's making. By highlighting the link between internal discord and national security, she suggests that unity is not just about feeling good, it's about strategic strength.
Yeah, it's about being smart.
Yes, in the face of real threats.
And there's that beautiful visual of her participating in the Hanukkah of Unity event, lighting a candle for Yotam alongside other bereaved families. What a powerful symbol of her yearning for solidarity.
Yeah, that image perfectly encapsulates her message. Choosing hope over anger, unity over division, action over despair. She's not just healing from her own loss, but actively contributing to a stronger, more united Israel.
So we've seen Iris grapple with the unthinkable, finding strength and forgiveness in the darkest of times. But her story goes even deeper, finding meaning in tragedy.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to explore in the next part.
This deep dive has been a real roller coaster of emotions. We've seen Iris grapple with unimaginable loss, embrace forgiveness, and emerge as this incredible advocate for unity. But her story doesn't end there, does it? There's another layer to her story that I think we need to discuss before we wrap things up. It's about the public's reaction to her story and the controversy it sparked.
You're talking about the backlash she received, especially from some on the left for not condemning the government more strongly.
Yeah, exactly. She's been labeled a babyist, a supporter of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and accused of being naive or even complicit in the government's failings.
And this backlash really highlights a crucial aspect of her story, that tension between individual resilience and collective accountability.
Okay, break that down for me.
So on the one hand, Iris demonstrates this incredible personal strength and forgiveness.
Yeah.
She chooses to focus on unity and supporting the IDF and the country as a whole. But some argue that this focus on unity comes at the expense of holding those in power accountable for their actions.
So they're saying that she's letting the government off the hook.
Right. They see her message as a form of denial, a way of sweeping legitimate grievances under the rug.
So they're saying that true unity can only come after a reckoning with past mistakes.
Right, after a real effort to address the systemic issues that led to this tragedy.
So it's this debate about whether forgiveness and unity can coexist with demands for justice and accountability.
Exactly. And it's a question that goes way beyond this story.
It does.
It's something we face in many areas of life. How do we balance the need for individual healing with the pursuit of collective justice?
Right, it's a question that doesn't have an easy answer.
It doesn't.
And it's one that Iris herself seems to be grappling with as she navigates this really complex landscape of grief and forgiveness and political division.
Yeah, her story is a reminder that even when faced with unimaginable tragedy, there's no one right way to grieve or to heal or to demand justice.
It's about navigating this messy and often contradictory terrain. It's about holding multiple truths at the same time.
Yeah.
And finding your own path forward with compassion and courage and a willingness to engage in difficult conversations.
Right. And that brings us to another fascinating part of Iris's story. This transformation she went through.
After the war.
Yeah, she talks about this awakening, a shedding of old beliefs and assumptions.
It's like the war and her loss just cracked open her worldview.
Exactly. It forced her to re-examine everything she thought she knew. And what's so remarkable is that this transformation didn't lead her to bitterness or despair.
She didn't get cynical.
No, she actually emerges with a renewed sense of hope, a deeper understanding of her own country, and a more expansive definition of what it means to be Israeli.
I love that.
It's beautiful.
It's like she's saying, I used to be afraid of those people, but now I realize we're all in this together.
Yeah, and she talks about her pre-existing fears of the religious and right-wing communities, especially as the mother of a gay son.
Right.
You know, she imagined a future where her family's freedom would be threatened, where that they wouldn't be accepted or safe. But then through this horrific experience, she encounters a different reality.
Right.
Outpouring of love and support comes from every corner of Israeli society.
Yeah, and it forces her to confront her own biases.
Exactly. And there's this really moving story she tells about meeting the mother of a religious soldier who was killed in the same attack that killed Yotam.
Oh, yeah.
And they're both just standing there, consumed by grief, and suddenly they see each other not as representatives of different camps, but as mothers united by shared loss.
And it's such a powerful image of human connection, transcending ideology. It makes you realize that grief, just like love, has this power to break down barriers.
It's incredible.
It is.
And that encounter really seems to be a turning point for her.
Yeah.
She talks about how it shattered her preconceptions and opened her up to a whole new way of seeing the world.
And she describes this shift in her relationship with her husband, Raviv.
Yes.
Who comes from a more right-wing religious background.
Right. They used to argue about politics and the future of Israel, but after Yotam, something changed.
Yeah, they found common ground in their grief.
Right, and in their shared love for their son. And that shared experience allowed them to see each other in a new light, to appreciate the values and the perspectives that they each bring to the table.
It's beautiful. It's really a beautiful example of how personal tragedy can sometimes bring people closer together. So we've seen these incredible shifts in Iris's perspective. She grapples with unimaginable loss, embraces forgiveness, and becomes this powerful advocate for unity. But it doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. And what's so inspiring is that she translates those shifts into actual tangible actions. She doesn't just talk about unity, she embodies it.
What does that look like in practice? Give me an example.
Okay, well, she actively seeks out connections with people from diverse backgrounds, people she might have previously avoided or even feared. She talks about visiting in Ulpana,
which is
a religious girls' school, and she was apprehensive. She expected judgment or hostility, especially as the mother of a gay son.
And what happened?
She was met with warmth and compassion. She connected with the students, with the families, and realized that shared humanity transcended any differences in beliefs or lifestyles.
It's such a powerful reminder that our fears and prejudices are often based on assumptions rather than reality. It's like we build these walls in our minds that may not exist in the real world.
It's so true. And that experience seems to have repeated itself again and again. Whether she's speaking to soldiers, settlers, or secular leftists, she finds that common thread of empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
It's like she's tapping into this deep well of human kindness that exists beneath the surface of all of our political and religious differences.
Yeah, it really is a powerful testament to the possibility of bridging divides. But this commitment to unity puts her at odds with some within the captive families movement, right?
Yeah, because she's been criticized for not being more outwardly angry, for not placing more blame on the government for what happened.
So she's being accused of prioritizing unity over accountability. How does she respond to that?
She acknowledges the pain and anger of those who feel betrayed or let down by the government. But she believes that unity is not about silencing dissent or ignoring these grievances.
It's about recognizing that we're stronger together.
Exactly, and that division only plays into the hands of our enemies.
And she even connects this to Sinwar, arguing that he thrives on discord within Israel.
Right, so she's suggesting that our internal divisions actually make us more vulnerable to those who seek to harm us. So for her, unity is not just some feel-good concept, it's a strategic imperative for survival.
So she's saying that choosing unity is not about being naive or passive. It's about making a conscious decision to focus on what binds us together, even in the face of tragedy and disagreement.
Exactly, and she's very aware of the complexities. She acknowledges that unity doesn't mean uniformity. It's about finding a way to coexist, to respect different viewpoints, and to work together towards a common goal even when we don't agree on everything.
Her story offers such a powerful model for navigating that tension between individual healing and collective responsibility. It's a reminder that there is no single right way to respond to tragedy or to demand justice. And ultimately, Iris's journey invites us to ask ourselves how we can contribute to building a more unified and compassionate world in our own lives. Can we find ways to bridge divides, to embrace complexity, and to choose hope over despair, even in the face of really profound challenges?
Such important questions to consider.
They are. This deep dive into Iris's story has been incredibly moving and thought-provoking. Her journey of resilience, forgiveness, and unity offers a glimmer of hope in a world that often feels fractured and divided. Thanks for joining us in this incredible exploration.
It's been an honor to dive into these interviews with you. Iris's story is one that will stay with me for a long time.